Okay, are we testing now? All right. I'll have 2 cheeseburgers, French fry to go, and yeah, we have. Rain is going to be a challenge tomorrow, and we have 3 people as part of the. We're good to go. Yeah. Okay. I'm on, right?
You're right in front of that as well.
Right in front of what? Stand in front of. Oh, that's an echo. Does anyone remember a very obscure song from 1961 called Echo by the Emotions? The song went like this while we figure this out. Echo, 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 echo. All I hear is the echo, echo. One of the worst rock and roll songs ever written. All right. We still have the echo. All right. Echo by the Emotions was recorded on Herald Records. The group was formed in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. It reached number 57 on the local charts. Some of the members of the group retired, but 3 of them are elected to Congress. Should we begin? I could speak out loud.
Yes, let's try it. I mean, should we take off the mic or is that necessary to put it on? Zoom.
I mean, as long as you keep the mic on, it's fine. It
Okay.
won't use-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it needs to record the voice for the people on.
Okay. Welcome everyone, and especially people here from the Columbus Amsterdam bid, but all of our history lovers in the neighborhood, all of our members of the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group, people from the library. We love this library because they keep our collection here, our special exhibit. If you haven't seen it, it's downstairs. And of course, they enable us to do presentations like this. The caveat that comes with that is I'm going to scoot us all out of here by 6:40 so they can clean up and close the library as they normally do at 7 o'clock. So I was in a rock band in the early 60s, and that's how I know some of this obscure stuff. And boy, it's obscure. And it's very common to have issues like this with amplified equipment. So, but we're getting around that. And what Michael and Wilbur and even Peter are doing is helping us broadcast this and record it for posterity and for people that maybe couldn't be here tonight. So again, welcome. My name is Jim Mackin. I'm one of a dozen or so members of our Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group. We promote our neighborhood history with the library collections I told you about, the exhibit downstairs, which we'll be turning over every so often. Also, our website, upperwestsidehistory.org, is now being sourced in a lot of articles and other presentations because it has the most amazing local history in this area. And if you thought Echo by the Emotions in 1961 was obscure, wait till you go to our website. Every building between 96th Street and 110th Street is listed, and we've got the architect and we've got the year that it was constructed, I think with the exception of only 38 buildings that we're still researching. So we've got that type of thing. We also do monthly tours of the neighborhood. And on our website, upperwestsidehistory.org, all of the future events, including the tours, are all delineated. So you can go to that. If you don't remember upperwestsidehistory.org, just Google Bloomingdale history, and you'll either get the department store or us. And what I know of the department store, they have a very illustrious history, but so do we. So get to our website. So two of the members of our history group, Michael Gonzalez and Peter Arnson, will offer this evening's program. We've been waiting for this for a long time because we're so curious about the deep, rich history of the Columbus Amsterdam Business Improvement District. Michael, as you know, is assistant director of the Columbus Amsterdam BID. And Peter, of course, is the retiring executive director of the Columbus Amsterdam BID. And good fortune, we have Dan Bernstein with us, who is the new director of the Columbus Amsterdam BID. And Dan, waving his hand there. Yep. And better yet, our history group is having the advantage of not only Peter and certainly Michael going forward, but also Dan's going to be joining us in a lot of our planning and our activities. So that's what we'll do. The Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group will be presenting our next program on Thursday, November 30th. An internationally renowned artist by the name of Beatrice Caron. And if you Google her or go to her website, you'll see the range of incredible art that she's done in a couple of different mediums. But my new favorite art piece in the neighborhood, and it may become yours as well, is on 108th Street, the south side of the street on the playground fence between Columbus and Amsterdam. She's rendered 8 medallions of historic figures from the neighborhood. And I think you'll recognize most of the figures. And the way in which she does it is wonderful. It reminds me a little bit conceptually of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, the sculpture up on Riverside Drive at 148th Street. So we have her coming up on November 30th. Before we begin this evening's program, and Peter's got some wonderful images that he's going to talk to and whatnot, we're going to take this opportunity, and this is something else we've been thinking about for a long, long time, to present a very, very special one-time award to Peter on behalf of the Business Improvement District. And I've got that here. And what the award says is, in deep appreciation of his unwavering dedication and creativity in shaping and supporting our work and for contributing to the enrichment of our shared history, presented this day, Thursday, October 12, 2023, the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group presents this award to a founding member, Peter Arnson. Peter, yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. And it might be appropriate for some of the Columbus Amsterdam Business Improvement directors and staff and members, anybody wants to come up here and join Peter, Michael, Wilbur, and myself for a photo op. So,
Please do. I mean,
Dan, Bruce, Laura. Yeah.
I really see this as being for the entire board and for the entire bid, because it couldn't have been possible without their work and the longstanding support. for the
Peter, can you step
organization.
out here for, try to do a photo? Yeah.
Try not to trip over anything or pull anything over.
Okay.
Yep, time.
And Michael, for sure. Yep. Yeah.
Improving the neighborhood already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Line up
Both, exactly.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
This is where the 2-4 has its community council meetings on a monthly basis.
Ah.
Come back on the third Wednesday.
yeah, thank you, Peter. Now we're looking forward to a very interesting presentation.
Have lots of really great pictures. This talk is the result of work by our staff. Have worked with us for a number of months now. And for our annual meeting. Subsequently, working with my wife, Kathy Burkett, we've uncovered a number of other photos that we've added in to it. And I will be speaking primarily to the photos tonight. I will try to follow something of a script because we are under a time frame. As Jim was saying. This is an expanded version of the bid timeline, which is available on our website. It began while transferring archives to digital files, and we have worked to incorporate photos that we've taken over the years. And it really is amazing going back through all the photos. It's really hard to cut out photos because there's just so many good memories with them. As I said, this will be an overview of the bid's work in the neighborhood. There are many voices and views in this neighborhood. It's incredible. And I'm hoping that this will be allowed to continue and to have people add in their voices and views. I have heard so many good stories and wish I could tell you all of them. However, I'm not going to, and I just will say that I look forward to hearing more stories as time goes on. There should be a map available, and this shows the bounds or our area. This is the district, these yellow lines signify the district that we work in. From 110th down to 96th Street on Amsterdam and up along Columbus on one side of the street, on both sides of the street once you hit 104th Street, but on one side from 96th to 100th, because there was no commercial property on that side when the bid was formed back in the early 80s. The bid was created in this area to initiate capital improvements to make the neighborhood cleaner, safer, and more prosperous. The bid is a nonprofit that operates under a contract with the New York City Department of Small Business Services. We are funded by property owners and merchants through an annual assessment that is collected by the city. The assessment is based on the frontage onto the avenues. And it is along, though, as I've just said, it is between 96th and 110th. The bid's origins were in the late 70s, early 80s, which was a challenging time. But it was a time when there was a lot of small organizations being formed, small community groups that were looking to try and better the conditions in the neighborhood. We don't have pictures in our files, but some of you may remember. Buildings had been abandoned after years of neglect. Street culture was dominated by numbers runners, drug gangs. Trees on our sidewalks did not have a very long life. They were used for knife practice, among other things, and suffered from a lot of different reasons. You had to walk watching the sidewalk so that you didn't trip over litter. Women had a very difficult time in the neighborhood. There were often guys hanging out that made comments or made advances that were unwelcome. However, this was also a time when people believed that their actions could make a change and have an impact. Groups were formed. They include some of the ones that I'll quickly mention is the SRO Law Project became Goddard Riverside's Law Project. There were the sweat equity buildings that people took over and became homeowners through, and the Urban Homesteading Assistance Board, which assisted them. There was the West Side Federation of Senior Housing, which has become the West Side Senior and Supportive Housing. The West Side Campaign Against Hunger, which was a small food pantry, soup kitchens and hot meal programs in many of the religious congregations. There was the group called the West Side Crime Prevention, which one of our members led, Marjorie Cohen. There was also Manhattan Valley Development Corporation, which Robin Baez now runs. She is also a member of our board. There's the Bloomingdale Family Program, which was the its formation and its operation were the basis for Head Start to be started on a nationwide basis. In addition, there were food co-ops, community gardens, block associations, all of these trying to make a difference in their immediate neighborhood. There was also the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, which had been a longstanding, is very much of a longstanding institution. During that time, it was a real beacon. It had a number of inclusionary social services. It brought art and greenery into the neighborhood and was a model for what possibilities existed. Each of these organizations could be a subject of a long talk. However, I'm not going to be able to go into any of those. During this time, Valley Restoration Local Development Corporation was formed, and it was with a guy named Joe Center as his director. Some of you may know his name better than I do. But in '84, an exploratory committee was formed to create the bid in partnership with Valley Restoration. In '87, the bid under the district manager and local homesteader, Maria Soto, got its first contract with the city. This would provide steady funding through the assessments that I mentioned earlier. Local property owner Joe LaRocca became the first bid board chair. During the time that followed, some of the projects that were initiated included creating a street cleaning crew, attention to trees and tree beds, trying to increase them, installation of lights on some of the buildings to make people feel safer, and then the negotiation to preserve what the building that had been that has become the youth hostel, and to bring it into the neighborhood. These efforts addressed issues that were important to the community and have continued to be expanded on during our time in the bid. Next slide. Okay. Maria retired in '97, and I was hired as the district manager. The bid was out of money. There was the entire budget was being taken up primarily on salaries of the street crew, and it necessitated changes. So over the next year, we slowly crawled out of that, dug our way out of that. We limited our street cleaning teams to the mornings. We reached out to stores to help with afternoon cleaning, and we developed partnerships with the Summer Youth Employment Program and Goddard Riverside's Greenkeepers to support that effort. Let's see, there will be flyers that are pictures that show some of those things in the future. Just one second. We reached out to Con Ed for help with increasing security lighting in the neighborhood and providing energy efficient upgrades for stores and buildings. This was an in with the property owners and stores. They knew Maria Soto. They did not know the bid. They did not know me. And being able to go in and offer upgrades on their Con Ed bills, on their Con Ed infrastructure was a major beginning for getting things done. Also, when people started to see things happening, that they started to associate that with the bid and with my being able to go in and talk to them about projects. We worked with concerned citizens and the police to take back building halls and doorways that were being controlled by drug gangs. One of our early partners, as I said, was Westside Crime Prevention. In addition, I'll quickly say about Westside Crime Prevention. We used to meet in the basements of churches. And one of the things that the police told us was, do not say anything in these meetings that is specific about any of the crimes or activities that you are concerned about. Meet with us afterwards. They weren't sure of how much people heard in the neighborhood or how that might be translated. So it was important to keep that fairly particular to the police and not to the meetings. But those meetings were helpful in terms of giving people a sense of hope that something might be able to be done to take back hallways that people felt uncomfortable or unsafe in. So, in addition, we looked for ways to draw people to the neighborhood. We compiled, printed, and distributed events calendars. You'll see the bright colored. Those we did for 2 decades and only stopped in March of 2020 as the pandemic started. All of a sudden we had 11,000 of them in our office and no place to send them because everything had come to a grind and stop. We used the events calendars to publicize the presence of groups that were providing activities, services, and to attract residents and visitors to the local businesses. Actually, scroll back for a second, Michael. Let me just, there. Okay, so these are kids that came out to improve the neighborhood. They were coming from Children's Aid Society, which is over on 104th in Columbus. They were looking, and then the other group at the bottom here are AmeriCorps workers that came in to help out the neighborhood. They were working at PS 145 and came over to help us because we had helped them with a couple of projects. So these are ways that we started to have an increased impact in the neighborhood. Next slide. During this time, I walked the neighborhood with an architect friend, asking about ways to bring art into the neighborhood. And he basically said, we don't have the money for it. But he pointed out that the skies, having access, being able to see the sky was really quite something. And that this neighborhood was unique in that sense, that we had these low-rise buildings, that we had the steeples that directed your eyes upward. And he said, build on those. And subsequently, we have been able to find funding for other art projects, as was mentioned before with the Beatrice Carone. But using that, we got started looking at the trees, looking at actually these right here are some festival banners that we put up in the early in those early times. They've got a little logo there at the bottom. They were 18 inches wide and 7 feet long, and we would change them seasonally so that we would go through the different colors at different times of the year. Let's go to the next. There's some more of the banners, and these were really appreciated by people. They also did start to change people's perspective on the neighborhood. People started to say something's going on. How can we be a part of it, or what can we do? And that was really positive. The banners and subsequently the tree guards, let's try the next one. Okay, these are tree guards that we designed and first got the first approval by City Parks Department to approve them. They had everybody or many people had had tree guards before, but they hadn't been approved and they were sort of not paid attention to by parks. These they actually went through a design approval process and gave us that approval. Subsequently got a grant from C. Virginia Fields, the borough president at the time. And we were able to put in these tree guards with the expanded tree beds, which is what's happening right there with parks contractors, all along Amsterdam Avenue. Prior to that, we had worked on Columbus with property owners and with a local iron worker. And he had given us discounted prices on the ironwork, and the property owners would give us money towards the tree guards themselves, so that we got it started. But it was subsequently with the grant from the borough president that we were able to have a major impact on Amsterdam. And as you can see, looking down here, we were trying to get 4 to 5 trees per block face. So on each side of the block, we wanted to have a number of trees that would create an alley or alley, I'm not sure how to pronounce it in any case, and a sense of separation from what was basically a highway. Amsterdam and Columbus had cars that would typically be going 40 miles an hour, but could easily exceed that. This tree guard, well, actually, I'll quickly say, Black-eyed Susans were an early planting of ours, and they were done in part based on Willa Cather's book about the people living out in the prairie, following the sunflowers home. And the hope was that we could create a home for ourselves here by planting the Black-eyed Susans. They did not survive. Once the trees started to do well, they shaded them out, so that they only do well where they've got fairly full sun. Next one. We worked with local block association, the Duke Ellington Boulevard Neighborhood Association, to spread flowers around. We started buying daffodil bulbs in 2001. Subsequently, after the attack on the World Trade Center, the city started doing something similar with the Daffodil Project, and we've worked with them on that since then. We also looked at ways to better support the trees by adding mulch, by adding compost, and so that their roots had a chance to grow, and the trees themselves had a chance to grow. We were also working with the community gardens, which we were blessed in. We had a number of them in the neighborhood. We still have at least three. 104th, La Perla on 105th, and then one on 107th. But we used to have twice as many as that of those. And for a while there, let me just see where I am in here. What should I be mentioning? Barbara Brown, a local resident who's since passed. This is our working on the in the tree beds. This was our spreading of the mulch, and this was a garden at the corner of Manhattan Avenue and 106th Street that was subsequently taken down, or a building was put up there. But this was called Common Ground by the Block Association, and it existed there for a while. Let's go to the next. Mott Hall 2 students. I really enjoyed working with students. I mean, I said earlier about the students from PS 145. These are students from Mott Hall 2, over on above the building, above above PS 165 on 109th and 108th Street. And they became regular volunteers with us. They came out to work in the library. This is the library front. And they were out there planting flowers, creating flower beds, and trying to beautify and create a reading garden out there, which they did for, I mean, it lasted for a couple of years, but then with changes, it was no longer. This was behind the precinct on 100th Street. And kids are out there planting flower bulbs in hopes that they'd be able to come up in the spring. Again, Mott Hall students, they did other projects besides the gardening. They were involved in a traffic study, looking at how to improve the traffic situation so that they could get to school easier. It was a concern. Let's see. Other things, we've planted trees with students at Booker T. Washington, and we've worked with Ascension students on putting up safety banners on light poles, some of which still exist. There was an initially, I think there was 7 or 8 put up, let's say 8. And there's still 2 that exist as far as I know. One on 104th Street, and it's like, pay attention, don't die. I mean, no, it was not that. But they made up little sayings and illustrated them. And it was very good. Let's see. One of the things that we did early on with La Perla Garden, let's try the next plot. Okay, this is our storefront over on Columbus Avenue. We had the awning, which was a retractable awning similar to the historical ones that could be seen in pictures going back 100 years. Most of our low-rise buildings were built in the late 1890s or the 1890s. And this would have been typical of what would have been on the front of the building, though it would have also gone up and covered a lot of the windows because it was an early form of air conditioning to be able to open the awning and keep the sun out. This is one of our workers cleaning around the tree beds. And this is a key thing that we do. We have workers out there 7 days a week, 7 mornings a week. They start at 7 in the morning typically, and cover the entire area at least once with a sweep. So we'll try the next one. This is additional work. Cleaning snow, shoveling snow. People come to Amsterdam Avenue when it's snowy because they know they can make it from corner to corner. You can see that we were trying to clear the intersection because that's where people were going to be traveling. This neighborhood has a lot of people that are elderly, that are young. And so you have people with strollers, you have people with walkers and wheelchairs, and having a clear lane is very important. And with the snows and with the snow plows and the cars, it's very easy for the roadways to become mounded, and those mounds are impossible, if not dangerous, to pass over. So we would concentrate on going north and south, and then as we were able to clear the across the avenues, which were being cleared more often by the plows. These are pictures from La Perla Garden. The community gardens were a place for people to come together. You had people of all sorts of backgrounds and all ages coming together and doing things together and becoming friends. And it was also a place where events could be held, activities that included art, plays, music. All of those things were possible. So we worked closely with La Perla early on. We were a fiscal sponsor of them. And I became the treasurer and the president, and it was more than I should have been doing, but it was one of those things. I mean, you can see a mural back there. This was from a parade where they had made swirly things, streamers. Okay, thank you. To going to a parade with, and then they also had crafts. So those were some of the things. Let's and this just our colors are yellow and black and white. That was in part because there were active gangs in the neighborhood. One of them was the Young Lords, and their colors were those. And we had to work to try and remove a mural that was dedicated to a kid that had been killed. It was right across from Booker T. Washington. It took up the entire wall of what had been an A&P until it was burned down. And we went in there at least 4 times, if not 6, to try and paint over it. We went in there with contractors. We went there on our own. We went at 3 in the morning. We went at 7 in the morning. We went at 7 at night. And we were told every time, don't touch it. Finally, we got sanitation and the police. So the sanitation went in with paint rollers and the police stood behind them to take it down. But it was after, I mean, we adopted those colors. They stood out and they worked for us. And it has stuck with us ever since. So you can see it on the banners, on the cans, and on the t-shirt. Let's see. Let's go on to the next. More of the community gardens. Just, they were a place for parties. They were a place for people, like I said, to get to know each other. Let's try and go on to the next one. This was a flyer from Transportation Alternatives back in the around the early 2000s. And it was key to what we were doing. We passed out thousands of these, along with posters from DOT about how bikes were supposed to be operated. And in addition, we were looking for ways to have bikes parked. This was prior to the bike lanes, but we were able to get over 50. Well, we had 3 installations of bike racks done over the course of 6 years, so that many of our block faces had a minimum of 2 bike racks, and sometimes as many as 5, because of the increasing number of restaurants that were coming into our area. Restaurants, well, let's go on to the next one. This is the basket weave gates. I talked earlier about trying to get more lights for the neighborhood. These basket weave gates let the light come out from the stores. They made the sidewalks more attractive, and they showed off the store. So it was something that we wanted to change from what had been the solid gates, that security gates that have been put up over the years. Let's go on to the next. Then there was this group called the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group. Actually, it was called Park West Village Neighborhood History Group. And it started when Lynn Armstrong held a group in the basement and talked about the history of Park West Village, and then reached out to try and expand it to the larger neighborhood. And it continues to this day. This is an early photo of people involved in the planning group. It started slow with having regular talks, similar to this one, probably a little bit better. Anyway, and I mean, Barbara Ernest, Cynthia Doty, who just had a memorial service, Ginger Leaf, just a number of, there's Win. I'm not going to go on. In any case, this was one of our talks where we did a tour, and we're over at the 455 Central Park West. which is where the towers on the park was. It had been abandoned for years and then got renovated, and we were able to go in there and do a tour. And so that was a talk at that location. The Park West neighborhood, the Park West History Group, was able to start to tell stories. One of the things about our neighborhood is that people said, don't go north of 96th Street because of problems. Columbia University had a pamphlet saying you can't go south of 110th Street to live. So there was, on both sides, we were being told not to come into our neighborhood. And through the history group, we started to tell stories of people that lived here and had the families here and did all sorts of very neat things. And so those stories started to change the perspective on this neighborhood. Subsequently, we also had tours, and we were able to, let's see, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but it's okay. Anyway, we did have tours, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. We also worked with Trees New York. If you whoops. This is talking a little bit about the painting over the graffitied gates, which I haven't done yet, but I will in a moment. The Mexican Independence Day, one of the things was recognizing the variety of people that lived in the neighborhood and highlighting some of their culture. So with Mexican Independence Day, we had activities also with the Day of the Dead, but we would also bring out maps and flyers that would tell a little bit about the culture of the people that lived here. And that started to change perspectives or perception of those people. Let's try the next one. Food and drink guide. Well, we started with a multi-page, very comprehensive shopper's guide. That's not the cover, that was the insides. But it had descriptions in Spanish and English for each of the stores. This was a one-time event. We made it and realized that we couldn't maintain it with the changes going on. So we shifted to a much smaller restaurant guide and started focusing on that. And more restaurants started coming into the neighborhood. And every year or two, we had to update our restaurant guide to add more onto it. When I first came in, I had hoped to have a antiques district or a crafts district. We had the Mugi Pottery, which was doing great guns. They were surviving, but which for our neighborhood was great. They were bringing in people for classes. Those people would stay for food, and they were staying after dark. It was quite something. And people would come because their inventory was changing all the time. You know, we tried to do that with others. We had a Botanica that was giving classes on some of the stuff that they were selling, the candles and other things. We had one guy that tried to bring in an antique store a couple of times and just never got it established. Valley Restoration, the LDC, started a thrift shop. That lasted for a long time, but it never built a community of other stores like it. So the restaurants really did become the identifying feature of our neighborhood. And so the restaurant guides were key to supporting them. And that eventually became our food and drink guide. And under that, we also formed the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group. No, we didn't. The Bloomingdale Restaurant Association. John, take care. John Stickney from St. Michael's Church. Anyway, I'll see you another time. It's okay. Go enjoy them.
So glad we're here to.
So there's, okay. Along with the restaurants, we have a large number of social service and community organizations in the neighborhood, providing a variety of services. We started a holiday wish list in part to give more publicity to them and to give people a chance or a method to interact with them, so that we had lists of things that they could be donated to them that would benefit their clientele. It was also a means of getting the information about the different organizations in hopes that they would start to talk to each other and share what was working for them or what wasn't, what types of services they were providing, and how to better share those services amongst themselves so that they were doing better service. So that was the intent of the holiday wish list, which we did for a number of years and was positive for those organizations. Let's try the next. Mexican Independence Day, I mentioned it earlier. We had crafts, we had music, we had dancing, and it was very fun. Try the next one. Graffiti Gates. This was huge. It was after dark. You would walk down the street, and it was often, I mean, this is with a bright flash, so you can see this, but the streets were dark with the graffiti. And so one of the things that we did was we had a company come in and spray paint with this copper green patina. And it was bright, it was colorful, it showed off who was standing in front of it or who was on the sidewalk. It reflected the light back out onto the sidewalk. So all of those things were positive. In addition, it picked up on the copper that was up on some of the long-standing buildings, the buildings that were meant to stay in the neighborhood. At the time, it included NYCHA. NYCHA had copper flashing on the roof until it was taken down by a contractor and disappeared. But so this was that the graffiti painting was a huge effort, and it was really well received by the entire community. Let's see, Graffiti Gate painting, National Night Out. This was done with the precinct at one of our local parks, and it's an annual event in the summer, and we've participated with them and helped to put it on for many years, and it's a source of fun. In any case, next slide. Chuck Tice helped us put together our first website. It was an odd thing. I mean, I didn't know anything about websites, but he was able to put something together as our logo at the top. It was somebody, or it was a broom being push broom going across the top of the website or across to the homepage, and it was fun. It lasted for a couple of years, and then it got updated. And in any case, part of this was in we started doing, in partnership with the Duke Ellington Boulevard Neighborhood Association, a music festival on 106th Street. It was a major undertaking. We had 2 stages, 10 to 12 bands playing in a day. And they were primarily local musicians, so that they had people that lived in the neighborhood. We had artists make T-shirts for us. Let's go to the next one. This guy, Eddie Alfaro, made this T-shirt for us and came out to work with the kids on creating art, chalk art on the street. We used our banners from the periods that we weren't where they weren't up on the this was in September, and we had a number of banners that were available from other seasons, so we used that as a backdrop. And this, I believe, was Charlie Persett, a local drummer who had a large band, and we had a number of jazz musicians that lived in the neighborhood. So it was primarily jazz that was being performed on that day, but it was from all over. One of the groups that performed was called Palo Mayor, and it included a family with 2 little kids. One of them now travels the world as a musician. The other one works in New York City all over as a dancer and as a musician. So it's very neat. Okay, 106th Street Block Association, Debna. With Phil Reed. He was a great city council member, and he recognized that we had resources in the number of playgrounds that we had. He funded the renovation of Happy Warrior down on 98th, 99th Street, and it transformed that playground. All of a sudden, people were coming and using it. People with strollers, with little kids, into an area where they had been told not to come north of 96th Street, and people were coming up and using it. There was kids' playground equipment. This group right here was a basketball group that part of a basketball team, basketball family. Earl Manigault, who never went into the NBA because of issues with drugs, but people from the NBA would come and play with him on this court. And so it is called the GOAT because that was his nickname. And so it is in the back of Happy Warrior, along with other things. Any case, let's go on to the next. It was the success of this went on to allow us to start to renovate other playgrounds and make them attractive and make them more usable. In this picture, you've got, this is one of Earl Manigault's sons. There's Henry Stern, head of parks, Phil Reed, another person from the Manigault family, Adrian Benepe, who subsequently became the parks head of parks, and Penny Ryan, the head of Community Board 7. We worked with all of those to make these renovations, these upgrades possible. So let's go on to the next. As part of supporting the trees, we worked with with citizen pruners and Trees New York. So there were classes that were held up here. Bruce James, sitting in the second row there, used to lead some of these classes. But people would come out from all areas of the city to take classes up here and to learn about trees. And it was also a way of sharing with the neighborhood, with the people that were out on the street and on the sidewalk, that these trees were important and people cared about them. And we were hoping that they would also. So that was important. Let's go on to the next. We moved from that small space over on Columbus to a much bigger space on Amsterdam Avenue. This space had been abandoned for not used for a number of years. So there was a gate down, and it was just like a missing tooth on that block. By being able to negotiate with the property owners on the co-op, the HDFC co-op, the Housing Development Fund co-op, the Sweat Equity co-op, we were able to move in there and renovate it. We had tried to get a credit union to go in there, but they said it would take too much money and they couldn't get a long enough lease. So therefore, we stepped in and did it ourselves. Yeah, I think that was me. And pulled down the old stuff, pulled out the rat nests, and renovated it, put it on a cement floor so that we could work on it. And there's Michael Gonzalez, an early volunteer. And there's Bruce James, also volunteering to make this happen. So anyway, that was our storefront. Let's go on to the next. Our storefront got used for lots of different things. Not only were we supposed to work in there on these desks, but we also brought in mulch. We brought in wheelbarrows. I mean, we had a cement floor. We could do all these sorts of things, and it became a work in progress. You know, it was always changing, but it was. I mean, there's even trees in there. Geez. Okay, let's go to the next. Steeples. I'll quickly say about this. Was the steeples where I should have been? I was going to say about the steeples real quick that we worked with the different organizations, and one of them was with the clergy, but not just Christian clergy, but interfaith clergy. So from all religious congregations, and we did events. One of the reasons that this is up here is because there was a Martin Luther King Day of Service and walk. And so we would start at Holy Name and go from there and visit different areas of the city or of our neighborhood to talk about projects or possibilities. So next one. The lights. This was an expensive project. This was something that I hesitated to do, and we couldn't do it in the beginning because we didn't have money. But when we got to that point, the merchants were very excited about the idea of lights. So we worked with one company, and that was our initial snowflakes. Subsequently, we changed to another company. Those were about 3 to 4 feet tall. These were 6 feet tall, and were much better. Getting the offer of some water. Thanks. In any case, so these 6-foot ones stand out. And during the winter, I will say that they really do make a difference. And we would get the company to come out and put them up in mid-November if we could, and keep them up until mid-February, just because they added additional light and an additional feeling of warmth to our streets and our sidewalks. Okay, next. Okay. Here we are. Around 2001, we started doing walks in the neighborhood, and Jim has done them monthly for years. It has been tremendous. He gets people that come out on a regular basis and will attend repeatedly because he changes it. He makes it work for the different people that are in the group. So he'll be out there, and there might be 2 people because it's raining or snowing. But then another time there could be 30 or 35. We also did stuff around a couple of citywide or activities. So there were things like coming up in October is Open House New York. And there was tours and open houses into buildings. So we got the religious congregations to open up their churches. We did tours and had a number of people from all over the city and actually all over the world coming to see what it is about New York City that people enjoy or find fascinating. And so that was a way of expanding our reach beyond the specific neighborhood. So there's that. This is Gil Tauber right there, and he was the one that did the neighbor timeline. It's over on the desk with Win and Jim over there. In any case, so those were early tours. Next one. Okay, so this was about the cans. We started buying these cans just because it gave more of a presence on the street, and it meant that people were feeling more secure. It also provided us with a way of getting our name out there and adding to the recognition of the bid. So there was that. They just felt cleaner because you weren't looking at the garbage that was sitting in the wire baskets or overflowing from the wire baskets. We also started something called Family Days. It was through a DOT program called Weekend Walks. And we did it for over 10 years. And let's go to the next couple of slides are those. I won't spend much time on them, but let's So we had things like Box City, face painting, painting itself, blowing bubbles. Karate Shop came out and gave demonstrations and lessons. And then we had kids activities, additional kids activities. Let's go to the next one. I love these. I could spend, I could spend time just looking at them. We had dance lessons. This is Mickey Navarro from Wisfish up on at the Red Oak, out there with a group from her operation. This was one of the Hispanic groups in the neighborhood brought out these dancers and performers and paraded up and down the streets for us for a bit. This was Barbara Hoho, who lived up on 112th Street and came out to make paper jewelry. She had a method of doing it. And that was exercise from a seat. And there's an outline of things happening on each of the different blocks, 106, 107, 108, 109, for that particular day. And that's Louis Centrone was his back to us. He didn't like to talk. He had a number of things going on in his life. He started working with us and he started saying hi to people. He became known in the neighborhood. He was an ambassador. He was a person on the street that people felt safe around and felt like they could tell him things. He came back to me with all sorts of stuff. Anyway, he continues. I mean, this job was transformative for him. In any case, let's go to the next. Some of the other things. A guy that raised pigeons on the roof came out down with his pigeons. They used to be all over the roofs of New York, but he was one of the last. Victor Casiano. This is Maria, who now runs the taqueria with her dad Jorge. In any case, for a few years, he brought down some of his pigeons and let people handle them, showed them off, things like that. Let's go on to the next. A movie was made about him. Oh, Angelo was. Wait, is this the next one? Doesn't matter. Angelo Romano came out and taught people, or had people doing drawings and paintings. This was a painting of the family days that he did for us. But he lived in the Red Oak on 106th Street and was very prolific. I could tell you more stories about him. We're hoping to have a history talk about him at some point. There was music and dancing. I mean, this is Casa Mantequilla, and we have had them out. We've tried to have them out at least once a year for probably a decade, and they've gotten better and better. And they had people of all ages dancing. Time 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, next one. We received an award for working with people with disabilities. We were working with Goddard Riverside's greenkeepers, and they would come in and work with us. Sometimes we employed them, sometimes they worked on their own, but they made a huge difference in our neighborhoods. We were planting bulbs. We were planting 5,000 to 6,000 bulbs a year in the tree beds in the neighborhood. And anyway, that's a bit of that. Phil Reed funded the transformation. Let's go to the next one, because I think there's one in here that is what this looked like. It was a piece of street with these signs that the trucks would run over and leave 6-inch spikes sticking up out of the sidewalk. It was transformed into this, and the trucks stopped running over it. So that was good. In any case, so this was, and it was named after Minerva Bernardino, who was part of the UN and the Human Rights Declaration of Universal Human Rights. I'm not saying it correctly, but she worked on that in the UN. Other things that, we've continued to work on bike safety. Let's go on to the next. There was the bike lanes and that with the family days. We had, Bloomingdale, Taste of Bloomingdale, come out and experience the taste, the flavors of the world. Because we had restaurants from all over the world. And so we had 10 to 12 restaurants giving food out or selling food out on the street through the family days. Laura with some guy dedicating our kiosk. And I see by Jim's getting up, that kiosk is in front of the youth hostel. I have gone on too long, and I'm sorry about that. We have, just scroll through things, and if people have questions, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to interrupt you to
Go ahead.
first of all, thank you. I think we're all just blown away by how much the Columbus Amsterdam bid has done over admittedly a long period. And it's just astounding, the stuff that's happened in the neighborhood. We don't want to overstay our welcome with the New York Public Library Bloomingdale branch because they've been so generous. I suspect, and I'm going to speak on behalf of our Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group, that we're going to have to do an oral visual history with you that we can put on YouTube or maybe do as a monthly program, whatnot, which would supplement this, because I think you could go on for.
And this is half the pictures that I could have. Keep on doing the pictures while I close up, if you don't mind.
And while he's doing that, if anybody has any questions or curiosities, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to get to.
I really am sorry. I apologize.
Stop in the office and you can thank Peter for service, and you can also, probably meet with Dan and Michael and Wilbur and ask you a question. And believe me, we have not seen the end of you, Peter. And the bid has wonderful continuity thanks to Dan's arrival. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you all. This is a great neighborhood and it's great to be a part of it. And the bid is a tremendous organization. Dan, I look forward to your tenure. Michael, thank you so much. Michael has been with us for over 10 years. And anyway, thank you all. Okay.
As we wrap it up, I'm gonna just say that we've got all these incredible renowned historians and people talking here. None of them have been as rich in their history as what we've seen this evening.
Thank you, Jim. I'm sorry, but it wasn't working pain. But in any case.